I'm going to show you now how to make this quite elaborate netted necklace. I've got one here that's all in one colour. The one I'm going to show you today is in two colours, just so that it's more easy for you to see the small beads and the large beads as I'm making it. Right, to make this I've got 4mm check glass beads, faceted, and 6mm faceted glass beads. I've also got a size 8 rock eye and a clasp and some culottes for finishing off. I'm going to do this on a nylon. This is a 0.5mm nylon. You can do it with a needle and thread using a Nymo or Superlon type thread, and then we need some pliers which we just use for attaching the clasp. Okay, we're going to start threading one of the kind of ups and downs, because the way this necklace works is we're going up and down the necklace. So I'm going to start off with a 6mm bead, followed by 2 of the 4mm beads, 1 6mm, 2 more 4mm, 1 6mm. Now we're going to put 3 4mm on there, because as we come down towards the bottom of the necklace we have a kind of wider netted thing. So that's 3. 1 6mm, and again 3 of the 4mm. So we've got 2 lots of 2, 2 lots of 3, 1 6mm, and now I'm going to put one of the size 8 rock eyes on. Okay, so that's our first run. I'm going to take the thread around the rock eye and back up through that black 6mm bead. As I say, I've deliberately chosen 2 colours today just so it's easier for you to actually follow what I'm doing rather than it all being one colour. I'm now going to go with 3 small, 1 large and 3 small to kind of follow that pattern. So 3 4mm, 1 6mm and 3 more 4mm. Okay. And you can see with them lying next to each other that that 6mm is the obvious one that I'm going to come back up through. Okay, and then I'm going to do 2 sets of the 2. So it's 2 4mm, 6mm and 2 more 4mm. Okay, and that brings us back up to the top. So this is the bit that's going around the neck, and this is the base of the necklace. So back up through that one. So you can see just the beginnings of the kind of netted look there. So now I'm going to put 1 4mm, 1 6mm and 2 4mm. Once you've gone up and down a couple of times you can really see the pattern coming, and it's much more easier to see what you're doing. So I'm bending around here and coming back down, so I'm going to come through that, one of those pair of 6mm beads. Okay, so we're working our way back down. So this time I'm going to do 2 4mm, 1 6mm, and then 3 of the 4mm to keep in line with the pattern we've got going. You do need to sort of concentrate on this a little bit because it's very easy to get your 2s and 3s sort of modelled up in your 4mm beads. So you can see I'm going to come through that one, coming down towards me. Okay, and then I'm doing this bit. So again it's 3 of the smaller ones. Okay, and then 1 6mm, And then we're back down to the little rock eye again. So this is a size 8 rock eye I've got on here. Okay, and I'm going to bring the thread around that rock eye and back up through the black 6mm bead. And pull it tight. Okay, so we've got like 2 little feet on the bottom there. So we're coming back up now. So it's 3 4mm, (6mm), and then 3 more 4mm. Okay, and this time I'm going to come through this 6mm black bead here. Okay, now I mean you can use any size of beads. I mean I've chosen 4mm and 6mm, and you can see the overall size that this comes out. You can use beads of different sizes to make a different sized finished piece. So this time it was 2 4mm, a 6mm and 2 4mm, and we're back up to the top. Okay, so I'll go down and up once more, and then I'll show you how to add new thread on it if you were to need it. So for around the top it's 1 4mm, 6mm and 2 4mm. But you can really start to see that pattern coming now, so you can kind of see how many beads you should be putting on each time. I'm coming back down this 6mm black bead. Okay, and then this time it's 2 4mm, a 6mm, and then I've got 3 of the 4mm beads. Okay, and I'm going to come down this one. So you can really see that netting pattern starting to show. Okay, and then we're coming down to do the little feet. So it's 3 of the smaller beads, one of the larger one, and then one of the rock eye on the bottom. And I'm coming around the rock eye and back up through that 6mm bead. And then pull it all tight. If you just actually hold the rock eye between your finger and thumb and pull the thread, that will just pull it all tight. So we'll come back up this time, and then I'll show you how to add more threads on. So 3 of the 4mm, 1 6mm, and then 3 more 4mm, and back up this 6mm. And then you can see we're back to the 2s, so it's 2 4mm, a 6mm, and 2 more 4mm. Now obviously to do this whole necklace you're not going to have a thread long enough to do the whole thing, so I shall show you how we can add more threads on. And this is the same whether we're using the nylon or if you're, say you were using something like a Nymo or a Superlon. So here's my short end that I'm going to attach to. So cut a new piece of thread, start to tie a knot in it, but don't pull it tight, just leave it so you've got the loop in there. And then your old tail end I'm going to pass through that loop and then pull the knot tight. So I've got a knot with the old tail end threaded through it. That knot will then slide down nice and tight up against your last bead. You've got 2 tail ends, the old one and the new one. Tie them together. I usually do a couple of knots just to be sure. Now with the nylon, because the knots on these can slip, a little dab of glue or a little dab of clear nail varnish on the knot, leave that to dry, and then you can cut the ends off and that just sets the knot. Obviously if you were using a needle and thread and using something like a Nymo, you'd take those ends and actually thread them back through a few beads first before you trim them off. But once you've added your thread, you then just carry on as before. So you keep going with that pattern all the way around until it's long enough to fit around your neck. To give you an idea, I've used, with the smaller 4mm beads, there's about 800 on the finished item, and on the larger beads, the 6mm, there's about 200. So you've got it all the way around, and now we just need to add our fastenings. I'm using these little culottes. They're like little oyster shells, little open oyster shells with a little loop on them, and we put a knot on the end of the thread, and then that knot sits inside that shell and you just squeeze it closed. So I'm just going to put a couple of knots here on the end of my thread. Okay, I tend to do 2. It just means you've got a slightly chunkier knot then for the culotte to sit on. Sit that knot right inside the oyster shell, squeeze it closed. I tend to start off by giving it a squeeze with my fingers to get it in place. And then I use the flat part of the, oops, that one's dropped off. I use the flat part of the pliers to close it up. There we go, that one's better. Just give it a little squeeze. And you can then trim the tail end off. You can trim that tail end off before or after you put the culotte on. It's just whichever you prefer. So we've got that on one side, and then we're going to do the same on the other end. So tie a couple of knots in there. Okay, and then sit the culotte around it. Now this one's partly closed. I'm just going to open it up slightly and start again. So sit the knot inside it, squeeze it closed with your fingers, and then if you've got the pliers, just give it another little squeeze like that. Trim the end off. Now you've got a loop on either end of your necklace. You can use any type of clasp, whatever you prefer. I've just got a small little magnetic clasp here today. So you loop that on. Then I'm using the round part of these pliers just to close up the loop. The fiddly bit with the magnetic clasp is it actually sticks to your pliers while you're working with it. But I just find they're nice and easy to use. And they're small, they don't detract too much from the necklace itself. There we go. Do that up, and there's your finished necklace, all ready to wear.